Have you ever wondered if self-care is defined differently as an adult versus a teenage kid? Well, today I've got Zelia, my oldest daughter, who's currently halfway through grade 11, here to discuss self-care. And I think she thinks that there's a difference. So we're going to talk about that right now. So right now, what I think is, what do you define self-care as, Zelia?
My definition of self-care is to take care of myself, before I'm taking care of other projects or assignments or even like my family and friends, and making sure that I'm feeling 100% before I'm involving myself in like other things.
Okay, so I think there's a similarity there about self-care between adults and teenage kids, but maybe a little bit of slight context difference. You said a lot about taking care of yourself before you can take care of other people.
Yeah.
It's along the same lines. Um, but for me, it's all about self-care is doing stuff for me first, in order to rejuvenate and come back to working or helping others. So it seems like the definition of self-care between adults and entrepreneurs and high school kids is about the same. Would self-care look differently between a teenage kid versus an adult?
I'm thinking 100%. It does.
How so?
Well, based on like conversations we've had and just well, we live together, so I know like what you do in your free time. What I do for self-care, like we have mostly the same things like listening to music, playing guitar, scuba diving together and stuff like that. But I spend a lot of time with friends when I'm not feeling 100% because certain like friends are able to help me come back to how like I was originally feeling, like that being a good feeling, or just making me able to find like my motivation again. And it's like they calm me down and help me become like more grounded and just come back to myself. um but like in your instance, most of the time you're just like taking time to yourself to just chillax and like let everything that happened like on the weekends, like you're just letting everything that happened throughout the week like leave your system and just like watching TV, woodworking in the shop, or like playing
You're talking
guitar.
about me
I'm
now.
talking about you.
Okay, okay.
um so I think I tend to put myself with people who make me like feel happy and stuff, where like you are just taking time away from like everything and just like letting yourself kind of
That's
do
an
that.
interesting difference. So you're talking about like I'm going more solitude,
Yeah,
being by myself, doing stuff by myself.
because that's how you find, like that's how you just let it all leave, and that's how you come back to like yourself.
Yeah, I call those are like my decompression times.
Yeah.
So to kind of separate or transition from work to home, or if, work has been very crazy and busy. Um, I got to do that also to, in a way, to decompress so that I can be a better person and someone to be more fun around before. That it's not it's very frequently, especially since my diagnosis, if it's been a really shit day, my head's going crazy and I can't think properly, and my cognitive abilities are shot. So that means my emotional regulation is probably very close to the knife edge. That decompression alone is very key because it just separates the day and just regroups my thinking and my emotions. Sometimes it's 5 minutes, sometimes it's an hour, depends on the day or whatnot. So that is a form of self-care, but it has a lot more to do with mental health care
Yeah.
as well. But I do have stuff I like to do with people for self-care, which I've been doing a lot more lately. I've been giving myself permission to do that. And one is scuba diving. Done a lot together, but I started going out with other people my age, or other entrepreneurs diving. And as much as I love my family, sometimes it's just nice to have that, you know, hate to say it, but to be around people, my friends, my own friends, and to do something that I enjoy with other people enjoying. So scuba diving, or even having great conversations with great people, or getting together with other people. So, what kind of self-care activities do you do?
Um, I like listening to my music. Sometimes that's like every morning I get while I'm like waiting for the bus, getting ready for school, just listening to music. That's my way of getting myself in the mood for the day. And I find like that's how I make sure that I'm ready for the day. Um, Taking a break when I need it, especially at school, things can get like overwhelming and stuff. So I've done a lot of like work with therapy and stuff for managing anxiety, but that is like a big part of self-care is recognizing my feelings and how I can like anxiety and how I can figure that out and how I can like not make it go away but deal with it.
Work through the
Yeah,
anxiety and talk it down.
exactly. So that is a big one. And then just making sure I'm feeling 100%. Like I can't start if I have like homework, my room has to be clean before I start it, or else my brain is just all over the place. I like to think like tidy space, tidy mind. Like I can't do.
So that's your routine to be able to get into work to transition into schoolwork.
Yeah, so if I'm working like consistently to keep my room clean so that it doesn't pile up and pile up, then I'm able to more quickly get into projects I want to work on, whether that be like for myself or for school. By like keeping that going constantly, I'm able to then get further with like school or chores.
Okay. Um, Actually, that's not a bad idea to discuss more about is self-care at school, and I'll do some versus at work, at the office or in the field. So, you said something about, school can be becoming overwhelming. Is that sensory or just the amount of work, anxiety related? Sensory, too much noise,
Yeah.
lights.
It's mostly sensory sometimes. The combination of like being in my big group of friends with all of like bright fluorescent lights at school, people around me talking, sometimes it's just way too much. And I used to have to get up and leave completely from those situations, but I've learned how to not have to do that by just recognizing like what I'm feeling, how it feels, and then how I can get rid of it. And then sometimes it can be workload, and with that, I do it by priority.
Mhm.
Um, but that's also something that everyone at school kind of has to deal with. It's workload. It's more of how I'm going to get it done. Sometimes when there's so much on my plate, it stresses me out so much to the point where I just don't do it. And then that creates problems for later. And
But
then
why would you stop now and not just go through it?
with schoolwork,
Yeah.
it's just like the thought of it is stressing me out. So I don't actually know how I would explain that, but there's like just a huge list of items that I have to complete, or like I have a little pocket in my binder of things that are ongoing. If that gets too big, I don't even want to look at it because then I just, once I get started, I'm just gonna like keep on going and going. And then,
So it's actually overwhelming your ADHD brain,
yeah,
you think?
yeah,
You just don't know where to start.
pretty much.
Okay. So I think what we got to do is work on a system to reduce that overwhelm, as well. So, but the question was during school, if you get to a situation of overwhelm, what do you do at school for self-care? Do you get away from the group? Do you just take a break, walk around? Like what? Because
Walking, I do have some friends. I don't know if I'm allowed to use names, so I'm not gonna, but um, I have like a specific friend that if I'm feeling overwhelmed, he understands exactly what is happening, and I can go say, "Hey, person, I'm like, I can't anymore. Like, can I just need like support?" And then he's there for me just to let me know everything's like gonna be okay. It's not like me feeling overwhelmed is not my fault. It's just everything is going on. So having a support person who like kind of understands and has that same with given like the sensory overload and overwhelm of just like the environment at school, that can really help because then you can also be that person for them.
Mhm.
So having like really surrounding yourself with good people is really important, making sure that you're happy with the people you're around. Drinking water usually calms me down. Like sometimes I just forget, but like for a test, when I'm writing a test, sometimes this happens mostly in math. I'm just looking at it and I'm like, oh my goodness. And I just take a drink of water and take like a deep breath, and then it's just I can do it now.
Mhm.
So it's mostly just recognizing how I'm feeling. And the biggest thing is pinpointing what it is, because then you've already solved most of the problem. Because I used to really struggle with, I used to go to said friend and be like, I don't know what's going on, I need help, like what is going on right now.
Mhm.
But when I know what the problem is, I'm able to then do what I know solves that problem.
Hmm.
But that was like the biggest thing I worked on in like counseling and stuff is,
Is recognizing how you're feeling and what is causing
yeah,
the
the
feeling.
first step is like what you're feeling. Because like if I'm feeling really overwhelmed, usually it's going to be like in the chest.
Mhm.
And then in that case, if you just like relax your whole like top of your body and just kind of relax, then there's not so
So
much
take a breath.
stress. Yeah. Or if it's like in your head, like if you have a headache for whatever reason, if you just like rub your head, try and get rid of the headache, then that is, you've recognized the problem and now you're going to try and like fix it.
So that's just your day-to-day school overwhelm, stresses of school workload and that.
Yeah.
What about emotional intense times? Do you ever get emotionally overwhelmed or frustrated or
Yeah, I was at like a club I go to at lunch, and it was just way too loud in there, and there was things happening like with friends, and I was just thinking about so much, and I felt like I wanted to like start crying. So
Mhm.
instead of feeling that way in that classroom, where like I already had those feelings before going into that classroom, but then
Interesting. We'll go back to that. Yeah.
once I got into that classroom, it was just like amplified because I was thinking about that, which is already really, really loud in my head. And then I have all these people around me, like talking, laughing, which is just so
Mhm.
loud and overwhelming. So what I did was I got up and left. I was like, I can't do that anymore. And I knew that if I stayed there, it would have gotten worse. So I just went and I just walked around the school.
Did you go back to the room after
I did
or just
not.
went away?
I went away.
Okay. So I just wanted the listeners to understand that that's acceptable. Okay. So even as an entrepreneur, when it does get intense, the best thing to do is just to walk away. And if you don't feel good, you just don't go back. And I got a couple of examples of that too, but I just want to go back to the point where you said you already knew you were overwhelmed before you got in there. Did you know that before or after when you assessed what was going on?
Um, I definitely, I was just like not feeling it all day. Um, so I was walking there like, oh, I'm not feeling great. Honestly, thinking that going there, I would like be around people who I enjoy hanging out with, but it had the opposite effect in that way, just because of the amount of people.
Mhm.
And the people in that club aren't like my closest friends, the people that I wouldn't say I rely on, but that really do help me like calm
Mhm.
down. So in that situation, I did go to that friend who I kind of have as my support person.
So were you aware that you used that as an early warning system, knowing you weren't 100% going into that room?
Thinking about it now, I realized that it would have been, but at the time, I didn't think about that.
Right. And that's what one of the tactics that I've done a long time ago was identifying the trigger that triggered the trigger, and then what triggered that trigger, and working back so that when I get into these situations, like I'm overwhelmed, I'm not having a good morning, and I'm going to go to a group of people, might be loud, and I know already that I'm off. I'm already off. So what can happen? I stay there and I go off the rails, or I come up with a couple exit strategies. If it's going to be this, especially, people that are going to egg you on or really trigger you, I could even go to the point where, okay, if they're going to say this and this to me, I'm just going to get up and go, or I'm just going to get up and go to another part of the room. So you can like practice your exit strategies or how to manage your emotions in the future. So you understanding that before you walked in the room that you were off gives you that heightened awareness that you have two paths: shit show or self-care, or how to manage the shit show. So those are key. We're going to fall over. Impulsive brain, ADHD brain is just going to impulsively react. Our emotions are intensified compared to the neurotypicals, and they come intensely raw and immediately. So knowing that ahead of time, and you might go into situations that might cause that outburst or intense feeling that you don't enjoy, gets you better prepared. And that's awareness and that's self-discovery. So I'm going to commend you on that, because that's really good self-awareness, and that's really good. So having yeah,
Let's just say thank you.
you're welcome.
Thank you.
So I want to give a couple examples, real life examples. So I was at a workshop in Chicago, and it was, spent a great day with a bunch of other entrepreneurs, a lot of good thinking. It was an overwhelming day. My cognitive abilities were just shot, and I was also tired. And we had a big group wanting to go out for dinner and lunch. So after the workshop, they had a couple drinks in the bar in the hotel, and I joined them with my water. And it was loud and noisy, and then they're all ready to go. And I just did not feel good to go to a restaurant that's going to be loud. It's going to be noisy, and we're going to be screaming at each other to hear each other talk. And I just knew I wasn't going to be feeling good. I'm not going to enjoy myself, and that wouldn't be pleasant to be around. And it's not like I can just get up and go. Like, we were driving 40 minutes in an Uber away. So, my early departure was very tough. So I just told them I got to lay down, and I can't go. And yeah, they're disappointed. They're upset. Some were upset. Some didn't care. But in the end, I did that because I needed to take a break, relax, refresh, and rejuvenate, and I ended up having dinner by myself, which was fantastic. And the next day, on day 2 of the workshop, I was in a better state of mind for it. So I have done that, where I just get up and left, try to see if I can go back, and I just knew it wasn't going to work. I even did that for a seminar that I paid good money for, and I'm not too sure the context of the reason I had to get up and go, but I just didn't go back. And you know what? I knew if I wasn't going to be there cognitively, and the problem is, if I'm bored and I'm not interested, my impulsive mouth starts shooting off a lot more. And that's not good for me. It's not good for the speaker. It's not good for the room. So having that awareness, those are all good mental health, self-care points. And you've brought up a lot of great points about self-care along that. So why are we prioritizing taking care of ourselves? That was a question that you listed down here.
Well, my reason for that is kind of goes along with my definition of it. It's like, I think that you are the most important person in your life, so you have to take care of yourself, because like I wouldn't be able to go to school. I wouldn't be able to go on vacation if I didn't have myself to take me there. So if I'm not taking care of myself, like feeding myself properly, giving myself the proper exercise, letting myself do the things that I like to do, I'm not going to be able to go and do the things that I love. Like, if I say I hadn't like been doing sports my whole life, I probably wouldn't have the strength to do the job that I have right now, or to go scuba diving, because of how like the endurance you need. So you need to take care of yourself to be able to do the things that you want to do and the things that you can do. Especially with school, I have to take care of like my head, my brain, because if I'm not like giving my 100% and not switching on my like critical thinking skills for physics class, I'm not going to be able to be successful. For me, success in school is like important. It might not be important to like everybody else in my grade, but even then, you got to be ready for what's ahead of you. And that starts like with yourself.
Yeah, and I think, and to summarize that, it's mental energy management is what I heard as well. So, and I think that's the key thing everyone's missing. It's mental energy management, brain energy management. And then if you're burnt out all your mental energy and you're going to push on, that's burnout, especially, and I'm going to speak more. Well, it's the same thing for even a student, just a different context. It comes to burnout. Then you get physical ailments, you get, sick or your sore muscles, then you get hurt. And that rejuvenation, that rest period is key. And the rest period can be for you, like you in gymnastics. I know for me, I've gone underwater quite a few times feeling, not 100% or, not happy, but once we get underwater, man, everything just goes away. But that's the whole point of the self-care is what can you do that just pulls you away from the world that's troubling you or testing you and just separates you from everything. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah. And like to add on to that, um, I know like with my friends and stuff, not everybody has that kind of thing to go to. So you do also have to take the time to find what you like to do and what helps you, like what gives you that sense of like recovery almost. Because when I'm talking about scuba diving with my friends and like how it's basically medicine for me, they're like, "Oh, I don't have something like that. I wish I did." And what I say to them is take the time to figure out what that is, because once you find what it is, your life is like gonna change.
Yeah. And after 2 seasons, we got 75 dives in already. So we kind of like that. Whee! Good job. So, wow. It always impresses me the maturity level you have with processing this kind of stuff. And I'm really impressed and I'm proud of you. So, taking care of yourself before others is going to help you in the long run and other people. Okay. And self care is all about doing things that you want to do, and knowing when to step away from the times that's not good and you need to separate yourself. We all need to be, a lot of times we can't get away from stressful situations, but when we can, or overwhelm, like especially the ADHD brain, it's the overwhelm that's probably the biggest killer for us is overwhelm, and understanding that overwhelm and not having, give yourself permission to just get up and leave. You don't have to justify it to anyone. No one's going to understand. Most are not going to understand. Who cares? Just get up and leave and try to come back. If you can't come back, so what? In the end, even if you're upset, like in the end, what would be better? You walk away and get in trouble for walking away, or getting in trouble because you ended up exploding because you were sitting there for other people's benefit. And it doesn't help us with the mental health aspect and the mental energy management. Self-care during school and work is critical. So self-care is not only doing fun stuff. The self-care is also knowing when you need to step away to take a break or call a meeting, say, let's all walk away for 2 minutes. That's self-care as well. And then, in Zelia's point about recognizing how you're feeling and identifying what is causing the feeling will help you with the resolution or the solution to deal with that feeling and situation. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Any last words for the listeners?
I was just gonna add on for what self-care can be like aside from things you love or stepping away. It can be like as simple as like if I'm having a terrible day, washing my face is enough to give me the motivation to like change out of my pajamas, start a load of laundry. It's like the smallest things like that you do for yourself can just change your like motivation and the energy
Yeah.
that you have for things.
And on that note, a lot of Azalea's examples has everything to do with transitioning from one thing to another. And these are actually little mini rituals, washing the face, Remember, the ADHD brain has a challenge from transitioning from one thing to another quickly. So we have to come up with ways to make that transition easier, and rituals is one of them. Washing the face. For me, when I get home from work, I get out of the clothes I was wearing that day and I go into my comfies for the night. But that helps me with my brain going work mode to home mode, workshop mode to home mode, stress situation to whatever. So in the end, make sure it's mental energy management. Self-care is very important. You can definitely help reduce your burnout, which is a mental energy or a mental health issue as well. And you are number one. Like Zelia said, take care of number one, because if you can't take care of yourself, you can't help anyone else. So, Zelia, thanks again for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
And to you listeners, thanks again for learning with me. Talk to you soon.